we live through our lives every day, never once stopping to think about what really is real. What is reality? The question sparks more questions, and as we continue on, we reach ontology, the study of reality, and how we try to find what's real in life. There are many theories for this answer, and it can be best represented through a spectrum with the two extremes, idealism and materialism, with all the other theories that take the different ideas in the middle, such as dualism, pragmatism, objective idealism, as was in the last presentation. I'll begin with materialism. Materialism says that reality is essentially matter, nothing more. The chairs you're sitting on now, that are made up of tiny bits of matter, is the universe and nothing more. When you start to address things that you might not think are matter, such as consciousness, thoughts, feelings, we can't feel them, we can't see them, they're described as electrical impulses in your brain. A thought is nothing more than neuron firing in your brain. The anger you get when someone cuts you off when you're driving is nothing more than the electrical impulse in your brain. The world can best be described as one big machine. All the matter, all the phenomena in the world, all the actions in the world can be described as all the matter reacting with each other, comprised of all the little physical bits together, all following the natural laws of the universe. Now, if they're all following the natural laws of the universe, we're made of matter. Does that not mean that we have to follow the natural laws of the universe? Meaning we really have no choice, which leads us to determinism. Determinism comes with materialism. Determinism is the idea is we are determined. What that means is we have no choice. We have no free will. We are determined to do the things we do. I was determined to come here and give this presentation today. You were determined to wake up and come to class. Another way to describe it is the cause and effect loop. It starts with a single cause, which then leads to an effect, which then leads to more causes and more effects, and so on, until you reach this endless loop of causes and effects. And through that cause and effect, we can actually calculate how things will act. An example is a leaf falling from a tree. I was just given by Jackie. When the leaf falls, we can correctly and accurately determine where it will land based on other external factors such as wind resistance, wind mass, all that. And it can even be done with something as complicated as a human. There's an infinite number of causes that can affect a human though, so it's something that's extremely complex, but it is possible. And that's how we know we're determined. Because of all that external factors and causes, it leads to a single effect that we are forced to act upon. You may think you had choices, you may think that you didn't have to come to school today, but because you came, you were determined to come to school today. There was no way you were not coming to school today. One of the greatest arguments for materialism is the light switch example. When you turn a light switch on, the lights come on. They don't have a choice. The electricity that the light is using doesn't have a choice. It's not going to just decide, I'm not going to turn on now. It has to. We know our brain works through electrical impulses. Like as I said before, the thoughts, the feelings you have are just electrical impulses in your brain. Because of that, your brain controls us, obviously. If your brain is made up of electrical impulses and electricity doesn't have a choice, why do we have a choice? If electricity controls us, well, electricity controls the brain, which in turn controls us. We don't have a choice. If electricity doesn't have a choice, we don't have a choice. One of the biggest problems against materialism, something that tries to debunk it, is the quantum universe itself, and the famous double slit experiment that we saw in philosophy class. To give you a quick overview of it, a particle cannon fires light, particles, matter, and waves. You fire it through a double slit back onto a screen, and it leaves a certain pattern. The pattern up there is called an interference pattern. That's made by waves. It's intense in the middle and gets less intense as it goes out. Those are made by waves. And a particle, a bit of matter, when it is shot through, makes a double band. All those lines there disappear, and there's only two, equally intense. When you go into the quantum universe and you fire electrons, matters, little balls of matter, you'd expect them to follow the rules of the matter and form a double band, but instead it formed an interference pattern. And that completely goes against the laws of physics. That shouldn't happen. So when scientists tried to observe it, it went back to acting like a ball of matter. And this is completely ridiculous. How can that happen? It makes no sense at all. And however, the problem with this is to assume that it made a choice to act the way it did is completely wrong. We still know very little about the quantum universe. What we know about it is basically assumption. We have no proof that it decided to change its mind. There could be laws in the quantum universe that we're not aware of. And to suddenly decide that it made up its mind is completely an assumption and has no credibility at all. On the other end of the spectrum is idealism. Idealism states that the world around us is just an illusion. It's a projection of your brain. And the chair you're sitting on isn't really there. Your brain has the idea of a chair, the thought of a chair, what it feels like, what it looks like, what it might sound like, what it might smell like. And it projects that so you have a world around you. Another idea that goes with it is if you observe or think something, it exists, it's real. And the other side of that is if you decide not to observe it, if you don't think about it, if you don't observe it, it could not exist. And you might think, well, like how is that possible? Idealism's crutch is the infinite possibilities that could happen. I'm not observing my car now, for example. I wasn't thinking about it before. My car could be blown up. It could be stolen. It could turn into another car. Highly unlikely, but a possibility nonetheless. Idealism focuses on those possibilities, what could be happening when you're not observing it. With idealism comes the opposite of determinism, free will. We make our own choices. Nothing is controlling us in the world. We control what we do. And the way they state this is, idealism believes in the sense that we have something else controlling us. Our brain doesn't have control over us. We control our brain. Something like a soul almost controls our brain. And because of that, because our brain controls our reality, and we control our brain, we can then control the choices we make. Our brain does not have control over us. We have control over our brain, therefore, we can make our own choices. One of the biggest arguments against idealism, however, is a scientific law that is one of the biggest laws in physics, is the law of conservation of matter, made by that gentleman there, Antoine Lavoisier. The law of conservation of matter states that matter cannot be created or destroyed. You cannot create matter through thin air. It can only be transferred. Creating or destroying matter is impossible. It is a physical impossibility and can never happen. Idealism states that if I think about something, it exists. Dennis gave the example, if I think the room's on fire, it'll become on fire. We all know that's not true. You can't just make fire out of thin air. It's impossible. You use matter that is already in the world to transfer the energy into the fire. You can't just make anything come out of thin air. That's impossible. Now with free will is something that is unfavorable and favorable. People like it and they hate it. They like it because we like to think we have choices. I like to think that I can choose to do something if I want to. I don't have to do what I do. The problem with that is taking responsibility. We've all heard it before, take responsibility for your actions. With free will, what you do is your fault. You can't say, I was determined to do that. You did it by your own actions, nothing controlling you. An example is, if you decided not to come to school today, and you missed your 4th or 5th class, and your teacher says you can't be in this class anymore. That's not good. To be kicked out of a class like that, it's not good. And you don't want to take responsibility for that, you don't. Because, I mean, that sucks. And so, people might say, you know, like, I was determined to do that, but if you have free will, how can you be determined to do anything? It's your own choice. You have to take responsibility for your actions, and that's something that people really don't like the idea of. In philosophy class, as we've gone to learn about, there are many, many different theories that attempt to answer this question, what is real? What is reality? However, I believe materialism is the most compelling argument because it is backed by scientific facts. There's facts that prove materialism is right, and facts scientific facts that prove idealism isn't necessarily right at all. Thank you.